Good morning, primary class. This is your lesson for Monday in our story, Almost Persuaded. Felix had said no to Jesus and to the Holy Spirit. How sad. Just 2 years later, Festus, the new governor, took his place. Had the Jews forgotten about Paul? Oh no. When Festus went to Jerusalem, what happened in Acts 25, verses 1 through 3? Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him, and desired favor against him, that he should send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. The priests and rulers still wanted to get rid of Paul, but Festus wouldn't send him back to Jerusalem. Instead, the priests and rulers went to Caesarea, and when Festus brought Paul before them, those angry leaders again said things about Paul that were not true. Verse 4 through 8. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept in Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, he said, which are among you are able, go down with me, and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar have I offended anything at all. Festus wanted to please the people. So, what did he ask, and how did Paul reply? In verse 9 through 11, it tells us, But Festus, willing to do the Jews pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem, and there be judged of these things before me? Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender, or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of those things wherefore these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. Now Festus knew that he had to send Paul to Rome, where Nero, the Caesar, would decide what to do with him. But before that, Paul had a chance to tell some other important people about Jesus. They were King Agrippa and his sister Bernice, and, of course, Festus himself. Verses 13 and 23. Verse 13 says, And after certain days King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. And verse 23 says, And on the morrow, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice with great pomp, and was entered into the place of hearing with the chief captains and principal men of the city, at Festus' commandment, Paul was brought forth. Paul was glad to tell about Jesus, and he wasn't afraid or ashamed as he stood before these important people with his hands chained. He told them how he became a loyal follower and worker for Jesus. As he spoke, Festus interrupted him. Acts 26, verses 24 and 25. Mm-hmm. 24. And as he thus spake for himself, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, thou art beside thyself. Much learning doth make thee mad. But he said, I am not mad, most noble Festus, but speak forth the words of truth and soberness. King Agrippa knew about the prophets that God had sent to his people. He knew that what those prophets had written was true. Also, he knew that what Paul was saying was true. Would he be brave enough to accept Jesus? Here's your question. Paul could tell that the Holy Spirit was speaking to King Agrippa. When the Holy Spirit speaks to us, how do our angels feel as they watch us choose? Do you think that they're waiting very carefully and quietly to see which way we choose?